Thank you all for being here. So I'm going to start out with a question about a problem which I think has loomed large, certainly in District 6 and for the whole city, which is the overdose crisis that has taken so many lives in recent years, and especially in this neighborhood. And I'd like to ask each of the candidates, this is a very difficult problem, right? It doesn't lend itself to simple solutions. So give me your two things, the two specific things that you would do to address this crisis, to reduce the number of deaths from opioid overdose, I think is the basic objective. So Honey, we'll start at the end with you again.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for the question. This is one of the richest cities in the country that we live in right now. And unfortunately, we have not been able to prioritize the addiction crisis that is on our streets. And it is a simple matter of prioritization. We have a hiring issue here in San Francisco. We have been building beds, getting beds, but unfortunately, we haven't been investing in staffing them. This is not just a policing issue either. I know that my opponent has introduced legislation that would require a right to recovery and, police areas around recovery institutions. And I understand the effort, but the real solution that we need is to actually help the people who are addicted. And there are thousands of them languishing on our streets right now. And the only way to fix this is through hiring nurses and social workers. Now, I am a social worker, and I've worked for the last 20 years to get folks off the streets and into care and get folks into recovery. And my first day in office, the thing that I'm going to be laser focused on is creating legislation that will make sure that we hire crisis workers. It's going to be the Crisis Workers Hiring Act. Because we talk for days and days and days, funding cycle after funding cycle, about funding bonuses for SFPD and hiring more police and raising their salaries. But we also, if we can do that for the police, we also need to do that for our nurses. We also need to do that for our mental health workers. And we need to make sure that we are staffing the institutions that we expect to solve the crisis on our streets. We can't continue to underfund these programs. We can't afford to pay our nurses and mental health providers poverty wages and expect the craziness, the insanity on our streets to change. And that's what I'm going to do for my first day in office.
Thank you. Matt?
So two things that I think are important are two things that I've already started working on. One is I worked with two of my colleagues, Raphael Mandelman and Catherine Stephanie, on a plan called San Francisco Recovers that is in the form of a resolution that is going to ask 21 city departments and 6 city commissions to report back to the Board of Supervisors on a laundry list of things, strategies that we can employ to make progress on our crisis in drug overdoses, drugs, open-air drug scenes, and drug dealing. Those items borrow from successful strategies that European cities and American cities have deployed around drug market interventions and other strategies. Vienna, Zurich, Frankfurt. There's many cities that have done a successful job at this. And the second thing I have done is to make sure that we are making the case more effectively than we have for why we need to invest the resources to solve this. That's why I asked the city's chief economist and the city's controller to commission a detailed report on how much untreated drug addiction costs the city and county of San Francisco. Oregon did a similar study, and what they found was that 17% of that state's budget is directly attributed to untreated addiction. I believe that we need to have a clear-eyed view of how much it costs us not to solve this problem as we go into next budget cycle, so that we can advocate more effectively for what it's going to cost to solve it, or at least make progress on it. And this is something that is personal to me in ways nothing in politics has been personal to me.
Mm-hmm. Right, we'll talk more about that. Cherelle?
Yes, so I think it's important to invest in health facilities and making sure that we invest in our conservatorship programs. This is also making sure that we ensure that there's financial support behind self-harm reduction methods. This is about making sure that the resources are there and available for those who are already doing the work, making sure that they have those programs in place. It's also about making sure, yes, that our healthcare workers, that our social workers, that our case managers that are on the front lines, being someone that worked as an essential worker, working and serving these communities, I've seen face on what kind of things that they're dealing with. And it's an insurmountable amount of pain to see people to continue struggle day after day with only small little resources to work with to get themselves uplifted out of poverty and hard economic conditions. And so this is about making sure they have the resources they need. In order to accomplish that, we need to start investing in recentering our focus around people, and that's what I'm here to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Miss Billie Cooper, and I am here tonight to ask for your consideration, for your vote, and for your support electing me the next District 6 Supervisor. My first, can you give me the two questions again, or can you give me the question again?
The question is, what are the two things that you would do to address the overdose crisis in District 6?
The first thing I would do, as a person that has been clean and sober for over 20 years in recovery, I would say that it's not only the people on the street using the drugs, it's the people that are selling the drugs. And the people that are using the drugs, we need to, as my other candidates have so eloquently said, we need to have more mental health services into place and more medical service into place, because it's not, we are taught that, and when we're working with people in addiction like myself, when I was using, I was misdiagnosed. We have to get people diagnosed properly, because you can't just address the drugs, you have to address the diagnosis and why people are using drugs. But everybody doesn't want to be clean and sober, so I'm not going to sit up here and say I'm going to wave a magic wand and all the problems are going to disappear. They're not. And plus, I would address all the misrepresentation here in San Francisco, especially in District 6, when it comes to why has this going on for decades. I've been here 40 years. Why has this gone on for decades? And the only time people are adverse to it is when they're running for something, there's an election. I'm marginalized, I'm a black, unapologetically black, transgendered woman, I'm a senior, and I've been living in the Tenderloin for 40 years. And I know what hasn't been done, and there still hasn't been a lot done. So I'm here, thank you so much.
So if I could just follow up on some of the answers. So I think each of you essentially proposed that the city make big new investments in trying to address this problem. So how much do you think it would cost, and where should that money come from? I'll start with you, Matt, since.
Okay, so there is a new source of money that it's not enough to solve the problem, but City Attorney Dennis, former City Attorney Dennis Herrera and current City Attorney David Chu have both been pursuing litigation against opioid manufacturers. And we have about $100 million over the next several years to spend. I feel very strongly that money is most prudently spent by having a real strategy and plan. One of the observations I've made, having worked, gone to work, actually, my first job in local government was 32 years ago, working for the district attorney. My observation is that the city probably does spend a lot of the money already on a lot of programs, but there's a lot of siloing. When you're a $14 billion enterprise, are we spending it as effectively as we could? That's why I think the opportunity that is presented by, here's $100 million over the next several years, that specifically has to be used for drug abatement as a condition of the litigation settlements. We should make sure that we're using this to maximize the value of the dollars we're already spending and better coordinating it with a cohesive plan. That's why with San Francisco Recovers, what I'm doing with people who are national experts like David Kennedy from the John Jay College of Criminal Justice, Bo Kilmer, who was from the RAND Corporation, who did work on Supervisor Haney's task force on street-level drug dealing, people who are putting real insight into this about the successful strategies that cities in Europe and the United States deploy that make progress on this in ways San Francisco isn't.
So, Honey, where does the money come from?
Absolutely. Well, first, let me just say this. I have spent the last 4 years working in City Hall, so I know how the sausage is made, and I also know what it's like working as a social worker, literally on the streets, as an outreach counselor with Larkin Street Youth Services and other agencies all throughout the San Francisco and the Bay Area. And here's what I can tell you, is that there is tons of money right now on the table sitting at the Department of Public Health that is going unused because we haven't been hiring the workers that for the positions that we actually already have open. And the reason that we're not able to hire for those positions is because we're not paying people a living wage. Nurses and mental health care workers cannot afford to live in San Francisco. And so the money is there. In fact, DPH and many healthcare institutions are paying their crisis workers overtime, which is in effect a misuse of funds, because with those overtime funds and with the money that is being left on the table because they're unable to hire folks, they could actually be raising those salaries and hiring the workers that we need in order to take care of this situation. So there's plenty of money that the city has. There's plenty of positions currently opened and accounted for. We just need to hire people.
$75 to $82 million needs to go directly, if not right away, to impact this issue. The reason I say that is because, yes, we do need to worry about the administrative part, which requires that we support our workers and those for living wages. But it also means that we have to work and make sure that the programs that are available right now have the resources and they're able to fund the programs that they need to get the work done. So this means that we have to make sure that we invest. And I'm prepared to say that this is incredibly important, that we continue to invest to make sure we get folks off the streets. You cannot do that if you don't put money towards it. You cannot do that if you can't get the right workers in there. And we need to see our departments of our health workers out on the field, out in District 6. We need to see them visibly working hard in the field, getting people out of the situations they're in and into housing. This is a crucial time right now, folks. This isn't about back and forth. This is about getting it done with real solutions. Thank you.
Well, here we go. The city has a deficit budget of, I think, 14 billion or something.
Yeah, the city has huge budgets.
You know,
Right.
and I've been here for 40 years. The city hall is in the Tenderloin. It's such a short distance from City Hall to Turk and Taylor, Leavenworth and Turk. It's about time people roll up their sleeves that have been elected and hired working in City Hall, because my life goes on after 5 p.m. I'm a marginalized black person. My life goes on after 5 p.m. And most of the people on the streets are people that are marginalized and black and brown. And really, when I think about it, most people on the street, just like me, I was using drugs because I wanted to fit in. I was lost. I was a lost soul. And I wanted to fit in to the community, to that community I thought I wanted to be a part of. You can't force addiction on anybody. I mean, you can't force recovery on anybody. They have to want recovery. But I'm saying I will make it my first job when I take over as supervisor of District 6 to roll my sleeves up and speak with the mayor and get whoever the mayor is to reinforce what we need to get done. Because as I said earlier, I know exactly what hasn't been done, and there has been such a small effort in doing something. We have to invest in people we have to encompass the whole person. We have to see, like I said before, we have to see why they're using drugs. We have to see other components of their life. We have to invest in mental health, because most poor people only get 5 minutes at that with a medical provider and a mental health provider. So we have to invest in more money. And like I said, life goes on for many people on the street after 5 p.m. I'm making it my business to be on the street, talking to people, sleeping on the street if I have to help alleviate some of this issue that has been going on for decades. Do we really want 12 more years of the same thing with Jane Kim and Matt Haney? Or do we want change? Do we want excellence? Do we want equality? Do we want equity for people living in District 6? And I will not only be the supervisor for District 6, but I will be the supervisor for San Francisco.
So if I could ask the other counties, you said something there, which is kind of to the point of a lot of current discussion, that you can't force people into treatment. So that's one of the questions out there now. So conservatorships is the sort of mechanism by which you effectively force somebody into treatment. Is that an approach that you favor? And I'll ask each of you just a yes or no question on that. Should conservatorship be used for people with severe addiction to essentially require them to get sober?
Yes.
Oh, so whose answer is for, who do you want?
Oh, no, go ahead. Yes, no question.
So I wouldn't equate that to a yes or no answer, and the reason being is because you have to have an understanding of what conservatorship is. Conservatorship is there to ensure that their bills are paid. Okay, when someone is enrolled into conservatorship, it's to ensure that their rent is getting paid, et cetera. This is also similar to a rep payee-ship program. And they also make sure that they are going readily back into and forth, enrolling them to benefit programs, enrolling them to appointments, healthcare appointments, and different things of that nature. So you can't equate and say that it's forced. It's making sure that all around the board that they are enrolled in the programs they need to be enrolled in.
Right.
And so
But
I think
as
there's
a
little bit of
policy
education.
question, there's a question of whether conservatorship should be used increasingly as a mechanism to address severe addiction. And that's kind of a yes-no question.
Well, then I would say in that regard, yes, we do need to use conservatorship. It definitely needs to be an option.
Yes.
Yes?
No.
No? Okay, great.
No, because
Okay, great.
Oh.
No, yes, no question.
because
I've
they
got a few more.
implemented
I've
that
got-
here in San Francisco so they could get rent from addicts, so they can make sure they get their rent money here in the San Francisco. They don't care about the people. I know people that
okay,
don't.
there was a yes, no question. Okay, I've got a couple of more yes, no questions on this because this is an issue of the moment, right? Should drug users be cited, right? This is a new policy where the police department is citing people for using drugs on the street. Yes or no?
No, what about the
Okay.
drug dealers?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Drug
Okay.
users,
Should, all right, should,
what about the drug dealers?
So there, we're getting to that. Another thing that has been proposed is that drug dealers should be essentially held, could potentially be accused of murder even for the fate of the people that they sell the drugs to. Is that an approach that you would favor? Yes or no?
Can you repeat the question?
Would you favor murder charges or similarly severe penalties for drug dealers whose drugs caused the death of another individual?
Well, that's
Yeah.
a loaded question. I mean, how come, this has been going on for
Well-
decades. Now it's going to be murder charges against the people selling drugs all of a sudden when they weren't doing shit to cut the drug
Okay.
dealing out on the street.
All right.
I'm a
All right,
person in
that'd be no.
recovery, and you don't do this to a person in addiction. You don't treat them like that. You don't do that to a person with an addiction. It's the people
Okay.
on the street are there for because they have issues, and it's a reason they're there. We got to stop criminalizing the drug addict when we don't do nothing to the people that sell drugs. We got to stop that. And it's
Matt,
not only happening in
I think you had
District 6.
you had something you wanted to say there.
For me, the answer
Please,
is
yeah.
yes, but understand that under the California Penal Code, there are specific elements of what murder is. Those have to be present. If there's a drug dealer if somebody's buying a little crystal meth and it's tainted or poisoned with fentanyl, those are the kinds of acts that a prosecutor would have to prove. And those have happened. There have been federal prosecutions for murder in which there was a fentanyl poisoning that was either deliberate or willful, neglect in a way that caused that murder. So it's not a sort of blanket. Anybody has to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, and just one more thing on the overdose question. I'm going to take a leap and assume that most of you are probably in favor of safe consumption sites, although you can say you're not if you're not. But then there's one further step, which is the notion of safe supply, that the city should actually supply drugs to addicts as part of a treatment program or to prevent their death. So I'm curious of your views on that. Start with
Is
you.
this a yes or no question again,
It
just
is
to
a yes or no
clarify?
question. Do you support safe?
Just trying to clarify and have rules.
Well, honey, don't
Safe
start
supply.
slinging mud, Mahogany.
I'm not slinging mud, I'm just
Don't
trying to-
start slinging mud, honey.
Yeah.
I'm just
You
trying
can't
to
tell me
clarify
it-
the rules, moderator.
Okay,
Excuse me.
okay. Are you desperate to win now?
Okay, hey, no, that's not that. That's a little bit out of
Well,
bounds
it's
there,
not
right?
good for her either to
Okay.
come down on me like that. You're not the
No, she
moderator,
was
honey.
coming
I was
down on
asking the
me.
moderator.
Close your mouth.
Okay,
Excuse me.
hey, please. That's not an appropriate way.
But what
to,
she said to me wasn't appropriate either.
she was talking to me, not to you. So,
What's the
So-
question again?
do you support safe supply of drugs? That the city should supply drugs to addicts in the context of safe consumption to reduce deaths?
No, I don't. The city
Okay.
shouldn't give no drugs to nobody.
I'm
Cheryl?
going to decline to state an answer for this one.
Sure. Matt?
I would be willing to have a conversation about this if this were a part of a strategy that would absolutely put illegal drug dealers out of business. If that was the way the government was going to approach it, I'm willing to have a conversation about that.
Since we're not doing yes or no questions, I would like to say,
All right, you called me out.
out of fairness, I would like to say if our goal is to reduce the 700 plus deaths that we've had in the last year, then absolutely we should be doing this as a part of overdose prevention sites, providing clean drugs to people so that they don't die, so that they know what they're getting, and yes, then getting them into care and helping them recover. But I do think that if the goal is to prevent deaths, that we do need to do that, and as a result, that would put drug dealers out of business.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so we're going to move to another hot topic, which is housing, and the first question is a straightforward one. SoMa is an area where there's actually been more new housing than in most parts of the city, but should there be even more housing in SoMa, and should the rules around that be closer to, there are two ballot initiatives out there, one of which supports construction of different types of new houses, other of which is more restrictive around affordable housing. So the question is, do you support all types of new housing, or do you support only affordable housing, or perhaps you don't think there should be more housing in
Is
SoMa?
this yes or no?
No. But please do keep your answers to 2 minutes, and I'm going to give Honey a little extra time since she...
It's okay, I don't need extra time. Am I starting?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Okay, I do believe that we should build all kinds of housing in San Francisco.
Good. And so I assume you support Measure D?
Oh, yes, I have endorsed Measure D. It's the only housing measure I've endorsed.
Yeah. Matt?
So I am supporting Prop D as well, which I think will streamline and produce the housing that San Francisco needs to build. Do I get 2 minutes on this? I'm opposing Prop E because that's the poison pill measure whose success would defeat Prop D. Even if both get yes, the E would actually basically kill that measure. I believe District 6, can I take 2 minutes to answer this? Because I think it's important.
All right, you're already 45
This is,
seconds.
5 minutes.
okay.
Go ahead.
This is, District 6 is now an urbanist district. And I think this is a place where this is a self-selecting group of people who want to live in density, in neighborhoods where, like me, you can choose not to own a car and use bike share and have bike lanes, access to transit, a high-quality public realm. I think District 6, if we get this right, is going to be what San Francisco is going to look a lot like in 100 years. We have to build housing because the state legislature and governor have decided that municipalities in California have to build housing. So we're going to have to do our part, or it's going to be done without us. So that's why I think Prop D is a really important element of that. The next housing element cycle, the sixth cycle of the housing element over the next 8 years, provides that we need to take steps to make sure that we're facilitating the production of 82,000 units of housing. Some of that's going to be in District 6. It also has to be in high opportunity areas that have traditionally not been available to multifamily housing. We have to make sure that we're addressing that, and I'm supportive of a housing element that is hopefully going to be the most progressive housing endeavor in San Francisco history, and we got to fulfill the promise of that.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Yes, so absolutely. We need housing, right? So we need some for multifamily units. We also need for our lower income, our seniors, our elderly, our disabled communities that often are on fixed income. We have to ensure that they have the resources they need in order to build that housing. And that comes with actually making sure that it's available by reaching out and making sure that those housing opportunities are readily available for those communities. And so I think that that's one of the concerns. I also think another concern is around those who want to build their families here in San Francisco and those that are displaced, that they get the housing resources that they need in order to come back into the city if that's what they choose, and also have space for them as well as far as the displaced individuals. And we also have housing for our underserved homeless on the streets. We need to make sure that the amount of homeless that are out on the streets, that the housing is available and ready for them in that regard. And I also want to make sure that we look at, for our middle class and our working class, that there is housing and enough substantial housing for them as well, because I think that that's incredibly important to make sure that when people are living and residing in this city, that they have access to what they need, and it has to be affordable. It absolutely does. You shouldn't be taking your entire housing, or your entire rent should not just go to your salary. And we just want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So we need to reduce the amount that they're paying out, and so that they can enjoy their life again. I think that that's what people want. More freedom to do the things that they want to do, and to really focus on jobs and really focus on their careers and really focus on the things that they want to do as far as building their lives here. And some of them want to even have children. They can't afford to. They're making hard life decisions that they shouldn't have to. And so this is about making sure that someone sees the need for all people here in San Francisco, and I'm ready to do that. So that's what we have to do. Thank you.
And how does that translate in terms of your support for Prop D or Prop E in particular?
Yes, so I think it's incredibly important that we continue to be open-minded to policy. I think it's important that we consider different options, because we have to be willing and working to talk to everybody across the board, regardless of where you stand on your ideologies. It's about making sure that the housing becomes available, and who does it, how we get it done, has to be that we're all coming together, working with coalitions or organizations and things of that nature to make sure that that happens.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Billy? Housing? Prop D, Prop E?
Prop D has different variables about it that I'm confused about. We talk about affordable housing, but in all the districts, there are people that cannot afford affordable housing. We need low-income housing. We have to stop letting these developers and these contractors getting a stamp of approval coming into San Francisco, building all these high-end condominiums. They're not apartments, they're condominiums. From 2nd and Market all the way up to Castro, there's at least 30 buildings of high-end condominiums that some of them are sitting empty. In the Mission, it's the same way. South of Market, it's the same way. We need more low-income housing. Honey Mahogany, thank you for when you say y'all created 8,000 apartments in District 6, but only 343 of them were for marginalized people on the street. That's case in point. We need more affordable housing. I mean, we need more low-income housing. Strike that from the record, low-income housing. Affordable housing is cute, but most people that make, my constituents that make under $10,000 to $15,000 a year can't really afford affordable housing. We have to invest in more low-income housing. And if I'm elected, I'm gonna make that my job to do that, because that's what we need. San Francisco has, everyone in this room know, San Francisco has so many overpriced empty units, and so many people living on the street. So I mean, the scale of justice, as we all know, is truly lopsided. So we need a better solution. I can't come in with a magic wand and make new solutions. We have to work on the old solutions that haven't worked in years. And this is not Hollywood. This is not Hollywood. This is people's lives we're talking about. We're not talking.
Anyone like to respond?
Well, I feel like I answered the question thinking we were supposed to just do one sentence and whether or not we did Prop D and Prop E. So may I actually?
Well, honey, I'll take off this microphone
you
and
said-
leave if you're gonna keep saying that, my sister. Quit that.
I'm sorry.
You're that desperate? You're trying to make me leave?
I'm trying to actually voice my opinion since everyone else had the opportunity to. So, moderator, if I may.
Yes,
But
please.
did you voice your opinion when you put
Okay,
that mailer out?
she's speaking.
Sorry.
Okay, hey. This is not the place for.
Why isn't it the
personal
place?
talk. Because this is a public forum where we're
Yeah.
trying to have
They
a
have to know what's
civilized
going
discussion,
on.
and you can't. Personal attacks are not.
I'm
part
not
of the deal.
personally attacking her. She know what she did was wrong.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity. I just want to say yes, and I do want to correct for the record that we did build 9,000 units of housing in District 6, which is more housing than all of the other districts combined. And we also built the most affordable housing in our district, more than any of the other districts in San Francisco. And is that enough? No, absolutely it is not. You know, my family came here as refugees, and there were 30 members of my family at one point living in San Francisco, and we're down to 2. And that's because they keep getting displaced. First it was to Oakland, then it was to Pinole and Hercules, then it was to Pittsburgh and Antioch because of the lack of affordability right here in San Francisco. The lack of affordability is why I got involved in politics, because I know that the way that we build housing here in San Francisco is ultimately broken. And unfortunately, with the way our city government is constructed, the way our Board of Supervisors is constructed, I don't think that we'll ever be able to meet our RHNA goals. That's why our housing element was rejected. And unfortunately, unless we get it into shape, we are going to lose millions of dollars towards doing the thing that we need to do most here in San Francisco, and that's building affordable housing. So that's why I am going to ensure, first of all, that's why I endorse Prop D, but that's also why I'm going to ensure that the very first thing that I do as supervisor is work on a ballot measure to be passed by the people of San Francisco to do citywide rezoning, because we need each and every district to have a plan to rezone similar to the Central SoMa plan in District 6, similar to the Eastern Neighborhoods plan, so that we can upzone and build more densely and build more affordable housing all over San Francisco, not just in District 6, because District 6 has been carrying the burden of building housing for too long. This needs to happen all across San Francisco, and in order to do that, we have to go to the voters. And, you know, I'm sorry to say, if I was in the District 6 seat right now, I would have been doing everything I could, working with our city planners, working with our city attorney to make sure that we pass a housing element that is legal and that is practical and that is acceptable to the state of California.
So what is the citywide zoning? What does that look like? The citywide zoning law.
So it would basically be a law that would require each district to come up with a plan to upzone each and every neighborhood.
Thank you.
May I also mention, which I think is quite important, is that as families begin to grow in District 6, that we also need to ensure that there are educator housing opportunities, because oftentimes our teachers are living as roommates. And I think it's incredibly important that these are the people that are building our future generations, that at least that we can do is provide affordable housing for them to live in it. And I think that also, as we begin to grow our families, and some of us want to start having children or already have children, and they want to make sure that they can, you know, live inside the city that they love so much. And so I just really hope that we can really get these things done and not just say it, because I think there's a lot of talk, but I want to see action now. And I think that that's where we need to start, is ensuring that folks have that available to them.
Thank you. So to move on to a third and slightly related question. So if you look around this neighborhood, right, I mean, right around here in particular is a good example, but SoMa in general. So there was kind of the tech boom that washed through, created a lot of disruption of different kinds, but brought a lot of money into the city. Now a lot of that is gone. You have a lot of empty buildings, a lot of, you know, really big questions about the future of this particular metropolitan environment, right? So my question is, should the city be doing things to essentially bring the tech industry back? You know, the tech bros were everybody's enemy for a while, but now that they're gone, maybe we miss them a little bit, right? So, I mean, so my question is, should we be doing things to encourage the tech industry to kind of repopulate SoMa, or not? or should there be some other kind of plan to remake this area? And if so, what might that be?
Low-income housing. We don't need to bring more people in with the tech boom. And look right next door to your building. Look at all the homeless people on the street right there in that parking lot. Look at all the homeless people down the street. Do you think we really need more tech companies booming here in South of Market?
Someone's got to pay for it, though, right?
Well, I mean, you know, we need low-income housing. I keep stressing the point. And some of these empty buildings need to be converted into housing. It's easy to put a partition and put cots in until people get permanent housing. All these empty buildings are empty, but that wouldn't mean a whole lot to you because you have privilege. But the homeless is right outside your building. So, I mean, come on now. You see the homeless all over this area. So do you really want people coming into this area making all this money when right outside their door is the homeless, and you knowing that the city isn't doing jack shit about it?
Well, my only point is that these things have to be paid for. And
well, we
so
also owe it to the poor and oppressed and people living below the marginal line, the margin line, to give them to help them. We're not only supposed to bring in the rich and infamous, we're supposed to help what's right here in our own backyard. And that's what's been happening here in your District 6 for at least 12 years, the last 12 years. Now, do y'all want change? Do y'all want someone that is the face of District 6? I haven't been a social worker for 20 years. I've been a social worker for 40 years. I did this when this wasn't vogue. I remember when we didn't have anything, when we didn't have social workers, when we didn't have nobody in the Tenderloin helping us. It's about time we get the help we so great deserve and need, and cut out all the backroom deals and slapping of hands. We got to do something about District 6, and I'm the right person to do it. I'm not living a Hollywood life. This is not Hollywood. This is my life and many other people's lives. I know I got to think about the people with money too, but my main priority are the poor people and the marginalized people in District 6.
Matt, go ahead.
So
now, take that to the bank.
So to the question about whether and to what extent we should encourage technology businesses to come to San Francisco, what I would say is we should encourage businesses as much as possible to come to San Francisco. One observation that I would make about the technology sector that can sometimes play out problematically when it comes to the economy is technology is something over the years that can be really boom or bust. And when that happens, I lived through the .com era, I think when you were running a publication, when all of a sudden it was a white hot market and very wealthy people were coming here. The non-rent control departments were just going through the roof. It was boom and bust, and then when the .com era ended, it just collapsed. I grew up in Massachusetts with Digital Equipment Corporation. I don't even think it exists anymore. It was the biggest employer in town. Now it's gone. Wang Computer was one of the biggest employers in Massachusetts. It's gone. So we should encourage, I think, technology to come here. I think we should be really thoughtful in when we're incentivizing businesses to come here. I think we're better served as a city when we have a diversified workforce, a diversified economy, and not put all our eggs in the technology basket.
Well, Matt, what about the poor people?
Well, I was answering the question about that.
I'm asking you a question.
Okay, we'll get that. We'll get to that. We're going to get to that in a minute.
What about the marginalized
Excuse me,
people?
Billy.
Well, we got to ask these questions.
Okay.
God
Honey,
damn it.
go ahead.
All right, thank you. Well, for me, this is really a question about what the future of downtown is going to look like. I think personally, I've heard from the current administration and other people that they want to force companies to come back and really make force workers to come back. And I just don't think that's ever going to happen. I mean, I think that we also should really admit that our downtown as a center of office space has never really happened, has never been successful. As a small business owner in the South of Market, I know that from 9 to 5, there may be some business, but after 5 p.m., it's a ghost town. And on the weekends, it's a ghost town. And I'm sorry, but that makes the streets dangerous. And that also makes it really hard for small businesses to survive. And so if we are ever going to actually see a thriving metropolitan downtown here in San Francisco, what we need to do is convert it into a mixed-use district. We have to convert all of that empty office space, do whatever it takes to turn it into housing. We need to have people walking their babies on strollers, walking their dogs down the street at all hours of the day and night so that it can feel safe, but also so that those small businesses that drive our economy, that are the backbone of our economy, that are so special to San Francisco and make us the unique, beautiful city that we are, in order for them to survive, they need that kind of consistent income Monday through Sunday, not Monday through Friday. And we should be building on bills like AB 2011 that was just sponsored by Buffy Wicks so that we can streamline some of these conversion efforts and build the housing that we need here in downtown San Francisco. And we absolutely need to ensure that we get tourism to come back to San Francisco. I mean, again, as a small business owner, I know how much I and my business rely on those tourism dollars, on those conference dollars in order to get through the year. And in order to get conferences and tourists to come back, we have to get a handle on the crisis on our streets. We have to get people indoors. We have to get people in care. And I will say, we also need to clean our streets and keep our streets clean. So from day one, I'm going to make it my priority to make sure that we're streamlining our permitting process for our small businesses. I'm going to ensure that we are working to get our streets clean and safe. And I am not going to stop until we get people the care that they need and get them into housing.
So if, you emphasize clean streets, and I just have to ask you a random question that wasn't really on my thing here, but what about this proposition about the street cleaners and part of DPW or not?
You're asking me specifically?
Yeah, because it's one of these things, that as a voter you look at on the ballot and you're like,
did we just vote on this?
Yeah, why are you asking me this?
Well, I can tell you, because I was deeply involved in the original Prop B, we clearly had a clean streets issue in District 6. And let me tell you this, I worked in the Tenderloin for a very long time, for many years. And the thing that the kids in the Tenderloin feared most wasn't drug dealers, it was poop. And so we worked really, really hard to do things like get 24-hour bathrooms opened in San Francisco for the first time, which, by the way, doesn't just benefit homeless people. It also benefits many workers, our delivery drivers, our DPW workers, tourists, people going out at night. It made a huge difference. And what we also learned was that stewardship of those bathrooms actually led to safer streets. And so we continued to expand the 24-hour bathroom program, but that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to keep our streets clean, especially in our high traffic corridors, which is basically all of downtown. In San Francisco, we leave the sidewalks to the property owners. And when we have a high density of low-income folks living in dense housing, when we have a high density of hotels and businesses and nightlife, it is almost impossible to get our streets clean. So we worked with the workers of DPW. We talked to them. We talked to all of our CBDs. We had, I believe, 6 CBDs in the district at the time. We talked to people from all over the country who worked in city government about the models that they used to keep their streets clean. And we came up with the original Proposition B. And part of that is deciding that actually the Department of Public Works, which was, by the way, rife with corruption, including a very public FBI scandal where people have been arrested and convicted, we figured out that the Department of Public Works was too big. It was far too big, and this had broad support at the board. And so we decided to split it up. And we also provided oversight over what was remaining of DPW, which was mostly the engineering side, which is a huge portion of its work, and also the street maintenance side, which again is responsible for street cleaning, urban forestry, and also street maintenance. So we ensured as a part of that original Proposition B that there would be further oversight, and that is making sure that we had qualifications for the directors of those departments so that, you know, people couldn't just be appointed because they know somebody and lead to another crisis of corruption. And we also included an audit under the city controller so that we could make sure that we understood how that money was being spent when they cleaned the streets, and we could make adjustments, and that would be public information so that we could, again, make sure that we were keeping our streets clean, that it was transparent, and that we could avoid corruption. This new Proposition B does not just keep the two departments together. It actually eliminates much of the anti-corruption measures, including the qualifications for our department heads and including the audits that keeps track and keeps the department accountable for keeping our streets clean.
Now, what's your view on that?
So right now,
I'm
the
sorry.
vast, oh,
I didn't answer the question before.
This is the Honey Mahogany show.
Look, I'm trying to.
You're giving her all the
No,
you've had time.
you have had
giving her
plenty.
all the time.
You have had plenty
I
of time.
had to take it because you give it.
I'm
Honey
trying
Mahogany.
to.
What?
I'm giving you plenty of time, okay?
What?
I'm trying my best
No,
to
you're
give
giving her
everybody
all the
equal time.
You're giving her
Matt,
all the time.
I
which
asked-
is
I
wrong.
asked Matt
and I'm
to
going
answer
say
the
it.
question.
It's wrong.
Go ahead, Matt.
So I am supporting.
I'm going to give you a chance next.
He don't care.
I'm supporting B. The vast majority of the Board of
White
Supervisors right now agree. Those of us who agree on disagree on many things, agree that what we took to voters was not optimal and needs to be fixed. We can keep oversight. One of the things that my colleagues and I agree on is that we are further siloing something and actually needlessly spending $7 million to split a department. I will say, just because it's something that goes back to some of my earliest days when I worked in the city attorney's office, I was part of the executive staff of an office that did the public integrity investigation into Mohammed Nuru in 2004, when we made a recommendation to the city about his future with the city that was ignored.
Right.
Okay. So I'm familiar with some of the issues that happen, but I don't think I don't think voter approval is needed for oversight. At the end of the day, this is a person who is now in jail. The law has worked. We do need better appointees. I think that Mohammed Nuru should not have been a city employee, and that should have been a decision back in 2004.
Well, if I may just quickly respond to that. If we're spending $7 million more to get our streets clean and bring tourism back to San Francisco, that's $7 million well spent.
Can you unmic me? I can't
Cheryl,
take this. Can somebody
Cheryl.
unmic me? This,
You can.
this is horrible. She's taking over everything. Are you that desperate?
All right, you can excuse yourself if you don't want to
Because you're
participate.
not holding this so we all get an equal chance.
I'm
You keep
doing my-
asking her all the questions.
I am doing my best.
Cheryl hasn't answered a couple questions.
If you would be quiet, then Cheryl could talk.
Cheryl, I
Excuse me?
apologize if I interrupted you answering the question.
Can somebody unmic me? I had enough of this bullshit.
So I would like to talk to you about economic vitality. This is about making sure that we don't use this as a time to punish people that no longer reside inside the city, but encourage them to come back. This is about investments in ensuring that those who are on the leading edge of innovative technology advancement have the opportunity to reside in our city alongside others who are also residing alongside the city. But we have to equally ensure that our communities are working together. We have to be communicative about working with different industries to provide job opportunities, to provide advancements for marginalized and underserved by providing work programs that provide them the opportunities to be uplifted and have good paying jobs so they can afford to live inside the city. This is about making sure that there are incentives, tax incentives for different industries that could use them, especially since there was just a pandemic that has set back many industries and the economy and small businesses. And so we have to make sure that those folks who are and have been impacted by economic hardship are supported. This is about getting people in the room to have these kinds of conversations, and we have to do it together. This is not arguing a back and forth about who can do it better, but making sure that we have the resources there to get it done. And this means communicating with each other. We have to move forward in San Francisco. And there's a lot more that needs to get done. And the way that we do that is by working together. But we have to have opportunity for folks to have jobs, correct? And what often is here in the city of San Francisco that provides those jobs? It is in different industries, because there are many different diverse people here who have opportunity and want opportunity here in this district. But we have to do that in an equitable and diverse way so that we can ensure that the resources are supported and that we continue to uplift folks. Thank you.
And if I could, just to clarify, so in terms of the specific question about incentives for businesses, bringing in businesses to SoMa, you think that is something that the city should do, that we should encourage business development, formation, importation,
Yes, so we need to
importation into SoMa. In other words, should businesses be encouraged to come here?
We need to encourage businesses to come here because that provides job opportunity and career opportunity. But there are companies and businesses here in the city and county of San Francisco right now that can provide ample opportunity. We just need to work together. So there are diverse and inclusive opportunities for our underserved and marginalized. We have to get them eligible with work first programs and development so that they can have the tools necessary to do the job and have an equitable opportunity at sitting in those roles and in those positions. And we have to do that by working together. There are some of you in this room who are in the top levels of your companies. There are some of you in this room who are sitting at the low bottom, who deserve to be promoted and have opportunity and work programs to make sure that you have an ample opportunity at fighting to live in this city to support your families. That's what needs to get done.
Thank you. So now we have a few minutes for candidates to ask each other questions. Now, in light of the tenor so far, I would really request that everybody keep it respectful. This is not a forum for attacking the other candidates.
Nobody has attacked anyone in debates. Every night we had in
Okay.
some debates, you have to tell the truth and you have to call people out.
Okay, well,
have I done
yeah.
anything that you're gonna call the police on me? No.
Well,
Because
I don't
we're
think,
debating.
but that's not
It's
the
not gonna always
that's
be
not the standard.
snowflakes and puppy dog tails.
Yeah, okay, but
we gotta get to the.
but name calling, okay, name
I didn't call
calling.
nobody
You
a name.
you called me a name, so let's not have the
I
name
did.
calling. Let's not have the name
senior
calling.
moment.
And please keep your questions
I just said white
respectful.
privilege, honey. That's all I said. And can you say it's not? Can you actually say it's not? Okay. So far up Honey's ass,
you have
it's
it-
ridiculous, honey.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you to step down because that's not really.
Well, it
oh,
is. You
we
keep going to
can't-
her for all the questions.
that-
You're overlooking
no,
us.
Look, I have no intention of this forum being an argument between you and me, okay? So
just thinking
if you,
it's
I
not
would just
true.
like to conduct the debate without it being an argument, okay?
Well, they treat
So
us
if-
all the same
Well,
way.
I am doing
Treat
my,
us all equally. I got one eye and I
Okay.
can see what you're doing.
do you have a question for one of the other candidates? A sincere question?
Oh, I'm scared to say anything.
Okay, thank you. Honey, do you have a question for somebody?
Sure. Just a quick question for Cherelle. I was wondering if could you talk a little bit about how any plans to produce more affordable housing in District 6?
Well, I think it's about making sure, again, I kind of talked about educator housing for those that are educators, right? Teachers, administrators that have continued to ensure that they have opportunities for housing. Because I think what happens is because they're on lower wages, which I also believe in making sure that those wages are increased exponentially and should be the equivalent of departments such as our police department, should be the equivalent of the folks at the Department of Public Health and so on and so forth, of our public work administrators and so on else. And they should have equivalent kind of support as well. And financially, I think it's something that we can do and will get done if we start working together and start having those conversations. The real conversations about making sure that people's wages are realistic to the economy that they're residing in. And that will also help with making sure that people get good housing, right? So you have to work on one or the other, or you have to work on both. And that means either making sure that you increase their wages and making sure that they're affordable and agile for the kind of economy that we keep on enduring and facing, especially with all the different conditions and inflation issues that we see in our economy. This is about making sure that affordable housing is accessible for our seniors, our disabled, and our veterans. We need to make sure that we continue to see that our underserved and marginalized communities have access to their housing. But our lower income and our middle class folks need to make sure that they have affordable housing as well. And that means that we address it wholeheartedly, a circle around every single issue, which means making sure that people have good paying jobs, good careers, access to education, workforce programs. It is not just one solution, it is multiple variable things that we have to look at to ensure that people are successful in this city. Okay. We need to recenter our focus around people.
Thank you. Thanks. Matt, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I am, I'm a long-term HIV survivor, and when I met Ms. Billie Cooper, it was at World AIDS Day, and I think Ms. Billie spoke movingly about her own journey in that, and I think this is I'd love to ask you, Ms. Billie, what do you think it would mean to the HIV community to have an HIV-positive supervisor, and how would you prioritize that as supervisor?
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey, for that question. You know, I was here, I've been 38 years living with HIV. I was here when my people were overlooked and underserved, when we were dying in the streets. As we were dying in the streets in the Tenderloin, you know, there was nothing being done. All the help and all the outreach was to the Castro. Times have gotten better, but it's still, the scales are still uneven. Black and brown people are still marginalized and are not getting the care they need when they go see their doctor. They're only getting 5 and 10 minutes. So I would implement a system for each and every marginalized and low income and poor person to have better care, to have better optimal care when it comes to HIV and AIDS. When you're diagnosed with HIV, people don't talk about it, but most people that have HIV and AIDS have some form of cancer. I'm a prime, here I am, I have cancer. I lost my eye to cancer. Why? Because I was undiagnosed when I was when I was diagnosed, and I didn't have the optimal care because of who and what I was, black and poor. And I would make it better so we can all cohesively have better treatment and better services. Because in the whole San Francisco, not only District 6, most scales are uneven. Most of the scales of justice are uneven. And I know I would have to service the other populations in San Francisco, but I'm a low-income, marginalized, grassroots campaign because I'm about change, and I'm not about lip service. I'm about doing something. My street credits, I know a whole lot about street politics, but I have moved up the scale, and now I want to be in City Hall and make decisions and make applications and make endorsements for better service for my people, my constituents. And I want to ask a quick question. Why is it so hard for people to say low-income housing and y'all say affordable housing when y'all know most people can't afford affordable housing? We need low-income housing. So affordable housing is a whitewashed word that white people use, black people don't use it. We need low-income housing. So if y'all were to start saying that, y'all would probably get votes by the marginalized and poor people in San Francisco, because a homeless person can vote. A person on the street can vote. So let's start saying.
You said you had a question. That was
well,
a question.
I'm asking them, why does everybody say affordable housing?
Okay, so go ahead.
So I think it's, when we talk about affordable housing, I think oftentimes it's
but
kind
affordable housing is not afforded to everyone.
Right. No, it's actually, I think it's sort of a broad term, but in the what's called RHNA numbers, that's Regional Housing Needs Allocation, it's divided into very low income housing, moderate income housing, and then market rate. Very low income is 50% or less of area median income. So if you dig down into it, I think when you talk about low income housing, it gets a little more specific. It's
Well, it's a fair question. You know,
Yeah.
I'm curious. I don't know the answer to this, but when people talk about affordable housing, a lot of times there's a range of things that are included in there. Some of which is low income housing, and a lot of which is not. So, you know, in the current proposals around affordable housing, how big a component of that is, you know, low income housing as opposed to other kinds?
In the RENA targets, 40% is designated to be either very low income or low income. So that means under, I think it's 20% is very low income, which is less than 50% of AMI. 50 to 80% is considered low income. That's the balance of 40%. That's actually something we can finance with tax increment financing. There's another category in there about moderate that's actually going to be a real challenge. It's 1,300 units we've got to produce as a city under the law, and there's really no apparent way of how we're going to do that. We are going to need to make sure that we bring everything we can to bear to make sure that the state government and the federal government are stepping up. The state especially, if the state is going to hold municipalities' feet to the fire to do everything that they need to do to produce affordable housing, the state's got to step up with money on this. And I think the federal government too has been missing in action for decades. There was a time when HUD put a lot of money into housing, and they've got to, you know, find the resources to do that again.
Right. Thanks.
I mean, I agree with Supervisor Dorsey. I think that we do need a lot more funding from the state and from the federal government in order to solve our housing crisis here locally, especially because we bear the brunt of so much of the people come to San Francisco from all over the country, especially right now considering what's happening with trans people being persecuted all over the country, with LGBT people being persecuted all over the country, with women being persecuted all over the country. They're going to be coming to states like California and places like San Francisco, and we have to prepare to welcome them. We have to remain a safe haven. And I agree with Ms. Billie Cooper, you know, what we call affordable housing is not affordable to most people. And the reason that we have so many of our youth who are on the streets, 40% identifying as LGBTQ, is because they thought when they came to San Francisco that this was going to be a safe place for them where they could build their lives. And unfortunately, sadly today, they are wrong. It is not safe. It is not welcoming. It is completely horrendous, and we have to do something. That's why I am so invested in making social housing happen here in San Francisco. You know, social housing is a model where everyone pays only 30% of their income, regardless of what it is, in order to live there. So if you make $150,000 a year or you make $15,000 a year, you'd be paying 30% of your income. And while I was Chief of Staff to Supervisor Haney, I actually worked on a project, supported a project to get acquired in the Tenderloin at 285 Turk to start that model here in San Francisco. And it's a model the city should pursue and expand upon.
Okay, thank you. I think, Cherelle, you have an opportunity to ask a question.
The question is why everybody uses affordable housing when we know we need
Well,
low-income housing.
I think it's Cherylle's question.
She was a little confused.
Okay, so is it my turn to ask a question?
You can
or
ask.
is it-
You can ask a question of one of the
I
other
thought you was
one of the other candidates,
Oh, okay.
if you'd
Well-
like to. You don't need to.
Well, you know, I think my question today is going to go to Matt Dorsey since I don't think anyone's asked you a question yet. I'm curious as to what you will do for Black women and women to represent policy that you know, what do you see for District 6 as far as women in general and what you're going to do as part of your plan? I know that might be a difficult question. I know that most of our conversations have been around community safety initiatives, but there are other policy where people need to see themselves, especially our BIPOC communities and our LGBTQ communities. And I want to see what specific policies are you willing to work and do?
Okay. So I think that a lot of this, so much that we talk about comes back to housing. And one of the things that when we talk about the housing element, about how we're going to produce 82,000 units of housing, what is inspiring about that plan is that it exists to address generations, decades of inequities in intergenerational wealth and racial disparities and socioeconomic disparities to make sure that we are righting the wrongs of past generations. The Chronicle editorial board did a phenomenal editorial talking about the origins of single-family zoning and the racism that was behind that, and that endures in many respects today. Intergenerational wealth and the racial disparities in intergenerational wealth comes back to housing, because housing is what creates the opportunities of intergenerational wealth, and we see so much, it plays out even today in disparate assessment values, we need to do something that is progressive and that rights the wrongs. What excites me about the housing element is if we make good on that, I think that in 100 years we're gonna be able to look back on what we're doing today as something that will have made a difference. I have said that if you had asked me 5 years ago, what's the most important thing that I did in my career, I would say that it was the 9 years I worked in the city attorney's office on marriage equality. If you ask me today, I would say it was having the opportunity to work with Chief of Police Bill Scott on 21st century police reforms. When after the murder of George Floyd, 18,000 police departments in the nation needed to look to a leader on use of force reforms, and San Francisco again led the way. If you ask me at the end of my second term, what I hope I will say is it's the housing element that really fulfilled the promise of what we can do, that made good on what it is to be the city of St. Francis. So that, I think that is something that is where I think it's going to address racial disparities that have persisted too long, and I think gender equality is part of that as well.
Thank you, Matt. So we have a few minutes for audience Q&A. So I'll take a few questions, yes, and please, only the ground rules here are please address your question, and please to an individual or more than one, and also please make sure it's a question. Go ahead, sir.
So I think what you're asking here is how, while we're simultaneously investing in new projects such as theater, what we're going to do about those that are displaced and unhoused. And the way that I think of it is we have to, and of course, continue to make sure that there's a housing available for those that are displaced, but we also have to invest in other programs and initiatives, right? So that means making sure that we invest in harm reduction models that provide different resources, and also making sure that they are placed in housing. And this is something that we have been working on. We just need more expansion for the services that are already providing resources. There are some working initiatives and models that are working to place someone that is unhoused into housing. But there's also other conditions that we have to look at, which is software programs that look at this so that all the frontline workers, our case managers, social workers, our clinical workers have a system that they can use in real time to place them into housing. This is something that will help work a lot faster to place people into housing. And then also, of course, we need to invest in the different housing for our lower income, our seniors, our veterans, our disabled, those who are dealing with mental health and substance abuse. But this is also an opportune time where we need to also invest in making sure, like our work programs, and something that you were also talking about being, that you got your start on earlier. I think that this program should also be expanded to other different nonprofit and departments that are working on trying to invest, like our workforce programs, and to making sure that those that are able and are willing to get into the program so that they can have investment in eligibility programs and workforce programs so they can get into these different companies and careers and things that they want to obtain for themselves, that we address that head on. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So earlier today, there was a press conference at the Public Safety Building with the mayor, and one of the observations that I made is that the status quo right now, when we're talking about the loss of life that we have had, the status quo amounts not to a war on drugs, but to a war on drug addicts, in which fentanyl dealing and fentanyl itself are causing a loss of life that is literally worse. The number of San Franciscans who lost their lives to just fentanyl in 2020 surpasses the death toll of United States military personnel in Afghanistan for every of the 20 years of that conflict. So what's happening on our streets right now is a war-level loss of life. So that's what I was talking about. And here's the thing, when we talk about the war on drugs, I want to be clear on this. The only war I'm interested in is the war on war metaphors, because it's a tired approach. This is a mid-20th century thing when war was something that had certainty. It's a horrible metaphor right now. What we need are sustained policies. And yes, what San Francisco Recovers endeavors to do is to make sure that we're bringing together every element of the city and county of San Francisco. Public health strategies and interventions, criminal justice strategies and interventions, because that has to be a part of it. Also, right to recovery programs, things that can incentivize and encourage people, and in some cases mandate people to get treatment or to at least be exposed to recovery programs. Sober New Deal, things that we can do to encourage people once sober to have purpose in their lives, to be peer counselors, to solve the problems that Honey spoke about with staffing that I think, listen, I'm a 3-time drug rehab graduate. I'll tell you, the best drug counselors are the ones who've been through it. So I think that the people who are out on the street right now that we would identify as the problems, if you really look at it as I think we do in the city of St. Francis, that's the solution to our problems. And then the last element of San Francisco Recovers is enhanced transparency, because if there's one thing I've learned over the years, for the city that is doing, that is the at least financial capital of technology, we have abysmal technology about how we track outcomes. We need to know, if we're going to get better, we need to know where to get better and where we're failing.
Right.
So,
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so we'll get to you, sir.
Absolutely. I mean, we do have some good programs already, specifically with firefighters and EMTs, to actually work with students, helping them get prepared to be able to apply to some of these first responder jobs, especially in communities that have been underrepresented, like the African American community, the Latino community, and just basically a lot of our inner city communities here in San Francisco. So those are great programs. I think we can continue to expand upon that work in terms of recruitment. But again, I think I do want to highlight that the city is leaving money on the table right now. And we have the money to do this. We just need to prioritize it, just like we have year after year talked about and fought for increasing funding for police, doing hiring bonuses, increasing their salaries. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I think there are regular budget negotiations that happen as a part of the regular labor negotiation process with the city. That's just something that happens. But we also need to be having those conversations with our mental health workers, especially when they're not just when we're making contracts with a lot of nonprofit providers to provide these services. We can't cut corners. We have to make sure that we have qualified staff and make sure that they're well paid so that they can live in the city that they serve.
So, you said, I wanted to follow up there because you mentioned this before, that we already have the money, like is it sort of sitting in the bank somewhere and not being spent?
Well, we have hundreds of positions that are currently left open in the Department of Public Health that are already budgeted for. So we just need to find a way to actually, even if we don't hire 200 of them, even if we can only hire 100 of them and raise their salaries, that would be money well spent. That would mean more people that we're caring for on the street. And yes, we absolutely should take the hundreds of millions of additional dollars that we are getting from the pharmaceutical companies that have created this crisis on our streets and put that towards hiring more mental health care workers, social workers, and nurses.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I would also like to mention, which I think is also incredibly important, the work that, I've also been in this role where serving mental health and those who are on substance abuse. I've also been an essential worker working in this field trying to house individuals and actually successfully housing them into different housing units throughout the city. I think it's incredibly important when we talk, and also when we talk about the wages of workers that are doing that work, that we, yes, increase it, but it also comes with other different initiatives that we need to ensure, which is burnout. It's often left undiscussed. It's often left as a last-minute topic, but I want to make sure that we recenter focus around people who are doing this work. And actually, let me emphasize that these people with the lower wages that they are dealing with, how do you, this is the concern that they are hearing, is that you're serving a community and barely to live and survive paycheck to paycheck in those positions. And so you have to look at making sure that economically the wages are going to be a supportive, economically friendly wage. And I also want to ensure that we address benefit programs that help them take off mental health days when they need them the most, so that they are at their best when it's time to come into the workplace. And I also want to make sure that we emphasize and ensure that because as far as some of you don't know, that I was actually on a budget committee where they do the negotiations in regards to the different wages. And the kind of wages that they're looking at is maybe $1 or $2. The difference in that is not enough, okay? That's not enough. You're talking about some of these folks still working on $17 to $20 an hour. That's not enough, not for that expert. You're requiring somebody with a bachelor's degree, someone with a master's degree in those roles, incredibly educated, incredibly have the sort of background that should be paid for. Okay, this is not enough wage in order to cover your student loan debt. This is not enough wage, and they want you to wait all the way in 10 years later. That's not acceptable either. We need to reduce that amount in regards to the kind of exposure they have. So I want to make sure that we really look at these different models and really address the key issues and make sure that they have accessible opportunities at housing.
And we have to stop criminalizing the drug users. We have to stop that. We really, I didn't see people clap in this room and hooray. We have to stop that. No drug user on the street wants to be there. It's a different situation. I've been clean over 20 years. I was out there. We got to stop. What purpose is it? San Francisco has been throwing drug users in jails for decades. Why they leave the drug sellers on the street? Well, I mean, we have to change that. We have to change that. Nobody wants, I live in Trinity at 8th and Mission. I'm so tired of walking out my building seeing the drug users and the drug sellers. We have to have a more comprehensive and cohesive way. We have to, like everyone says, we got to invest more money in mental health because poor people don't get the right time with doctors to get the right diagnosis. And they're right back out on the street. People that live up in their ivory towers, do they really care about the marginalized drug users on the street? We have to do something about that. We have to.
Sir?
So this is investment in our self-harm reduction models, again, making sure that folks have access to the behavioral health services that are available. But like you said, yes, there is a long line of folks who are underserved. Okay, I'm talking about year after year after year after year and still underserved. Because why? Because we don't invest in the services that need to be invested in, that are working, and then we don't invest in the right programs. And that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the direct results of lack of investment. The lack of investment equals the lack of people that are in housing, right? So we need to make sure that we continue to invest in people, recentering our focus into people again.
Anyone else like to respond?
Just, I mean, this actually, I'll pick up a point that Honey had made earlier about staffing. You know, Vic Eisen, who is the CEO of Health Right 360, will tell you they have beds, but if there's not an adequate staffing, that's a problem. San Francisco is supposed to be doing on-demand treatment. What they have is an on-demand assessment, and I don't know that they necessarily have that. I've had personal experiences with friends who are seeking recovery. And sometimes it's scary because when somebody makes a decision that they need help, it's like there's a limited window. And is there gonna get to a point where it's, oh, you know, I'm good. So if we can move and make sure that we're accommodating, one of the things that we're trying to do in San Francisco Recovers is, look, by the time this is implemented, what I'm hoping is we have real on-demand treatment and 24/7, this is the other thing, the 24/7 intake. So is being able to call 311, I need help, and have something like the street overdose response team will be there within 30 minutes. We're going to do this because.
Okay. Well, thank you. You know, we are out of time. We have to finish this on time. So we will be around. Hopefully the candidates will be around a little bit afterwards for follow-up questions. I am going to give each of the candidates just 1 minute, and please keep it to 1 minute for your closing statement. And we will end at 7:32, 2 minutes over time. So
Okay, can somebody time
go
me
ahead.
for 1 minute, please? So I want my whole minute, honey. I want my whole minute.
Okay, we'll keep
I'm Miss
track.
Billie Cooper, and I'm here. This is my life we're talking about. I'm talking to you. I'm coming to you, even if you don't live in District 6. But if you live in District 6, it's about time to have one of us, a community member who has been there, who has lived on the street, who has been homeless, who has went from homelessness to prosperity, who has made a choice, and who will fight and for District 6 and the city of San Francisco to get things done in a more optimal and more cohesive way. Once again, 40 years, I know what hasn't been done, and I know the little bit that has been done. And I'm going to change it, because this is not only the face of HIV and AIDS, this is the face of District 6, and this is the face of San Francisco.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Do I have any
And
more
good
time?
job.
Do I have any
You
more
got it
time?
right in. You were right at 55 seconds.
Oh,
Very
no.
good. Very
Okay.
good job there. Okay, Cherelle, go ahead.
San Francisco, we have work to do. I am dedicated and will continue to be dedicated to public service. This is about seeing our underserved and marginalized communities. This is about working for you and recentering our focus on making sure that you are recognized and emphasize the importance of uplifting our communities. We can get this done together. And I'm thinking that it is so important for you to continue to see somebody in that seat that can represent you the most. That is me. I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So for me, it was the convergence of a public health crisis in drug overdose deaths and my own personal journey in recovery from addiction that moved me to ask Mayor London Breed to consider me for a role that, quite candidly, I never thought I would want, let alone have. But I am somebody who identifies as an addict and an alcoholic. I've spent most of my adult life in recovery. I've had setbacks along the way. But if you believe, as I do, that making progress on street, open-air drug scenes, drug dealing, drug overdose deaths is the most important issue right now, the thing that you have to understand about me is this will never be an issue of the month. It is why I ask for this job. It is nothing less than the obligation of my survival. I am going to work hard on the Board of Supervisors to get it done. And what I don't get done on the Board of Supervisors, I'm going to voters with. Give me 4 years. That's what I'm asking for. And thank you so much for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Perfect. Right at 1 minute. Honey?
Well, we've all been through this collective trauma of COVID-19, and unfortunately we can all admit that San Francisco is one of the cities, the large cities, that has been slowest to recover. And in this critical moment, what we need in the District 6 seat is an independent voice. What we need is someone with experience on the streets and in city government. What we need is someone with deep community connections that knows what's happening and knows the people who are here. And that person is me. I have been fighting my entire life because I love San Francisco, to make it a better place, to make it a more welcoming place, fighting for workers, fighting for the people who live here, fighting for small business owners because I am all of those things. That's why I have the support of all of the people who clean up the city's biggest messes. And I'm talking about the people who are picking up the garbage. I'm talking about our street cleaners. I'm also talking about our nurses, our EMTs, our teachers, our firefighters, our mental health workers. They've all endorsed me, and they want to see me win because they know that I'm going to fight every day to fix this problem and be the best supervisor in District 6 you've ever seen.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate your time and your thoughts, and thank you to the audience. And I hope it was.
Thank you, audience.
Hope it was interesting and worthwhile.